Good evening, everybody. This is Mike Gray from The Striker. We're here tonight. We're going to be talking about the Galaxy in Portland, and here to help me out is my co-host. He is the LA Galaxy beat writer for The Striker. Say hi to Alex. Alex Ruiz, to be specific.
Yeah, hey, good evening, everybody. It's me, Alex. Me and Mike, ready for another great episode. Talking soccer. Let's get this going.
I'm feeling great. I had a good workout yesterday. I go to LA Fitness a lot, and it's interesting. These days, you see a lot of soccer jerseys when you're there working out. Mostly Euro snob. I mean, you get a lot of Man City and Juventus. Ooh. But, you also got a lot of MLS jerseys. Maybe a bit more LAFC than the Galaxy, but what do you expect? They're the champs. And then you also get, you get Timbers, you get Kansas City. You got a lot of random teams that I'm pretty sure the people picked up from the local TJ Maxx or Marshalls. But, other than that, I was trying to listen to Alex last night because he was on the Corner of the Galaxy podcast. I was in the sauna with a bunch of dudes. That wasn't fun. So I ended up migrating over to the jacuzzi. That was a bit difficult because you're trying to, you're on the chat, but, you're in the water, so you can't get anything done and get distracted. So I tried, and then, after all that, it ended up being the Wi-Fi that screwed things up. So, you know how it is sometimes. But, all right, let's get to the soccer. Guys, the Galaxy went to Portland, and they had probably best first half of the season. Over 70% possession. They outshot the Timbers 11-1, including 5 block shots, so really 16-1. They outdueled them 43-22, which is basically a 2-1 edge. And there's two reasons for this. I think part of the reason is that Portland was, to quote Matt Doyle, ruined by injuries. They've just got so many missing pieces right now that they're incomplete. And then, maybe Gio Savarese, they've got an overly defensive style. It's hard for them to really break it on transition, really threaten the opposition. And then the other change was that the Galaxy swapped Efra for Tyler Boyd, and I think that gave them
Memo Rodriguez.
Oh, excuse me, Memo Rodriguez. And so it ended up being Boyd and Alvarez, Boyd and Rodriguez, and so there's a bit more balance. But Alex, what would you say was your one big takeaway from the match?
Yeah, my big takeaway was that this team, foundationally, when it comes to the defense and the midfield, I think they're pretty solid. I think, through the first 4 games of the year, right, you've seen, the club keep 2 clean sheets. They haven't allowed a team to score an open play for 3 straight games. And the midfield has looked amazing. I mean, I have a piece tomorrow coming out on Striker, kind of, first 4 game sample size, kind of giving my MVP so far, my surprise player, some overreaction takes that I asked some Galaxy fans that gave me, something to kind of, discuss about what's going on so early in the year. And well, I think that the spine that they have is great. Obviously, the main concern is what goes on in the final third. I think we saw Preston Judd have a couple opportunities where he made some really good runs and was able to outmuscle some of the defenders, but just couldn't get that finishing touch on the one chance in the first half. And in the second half, I thought his decision-making just wasn't great. I felt like he kind of took too long to make a pass or a shot. I thought that needed to be a little bit quicker to maybe, give some other player a better chance. And also the wing play. I mean, Tyler Boyd did be the best he could, but I mean, he didn't really impact the game as much as I thought he should have if the Galaxy wanted to win. I thought Memo Rodriguez had a really good game. I thought he was decent when it came to giving support on that right side. I think if you look at the stats of the game, the 45% of the LA Galaxy's attacks come from that right-hand side. And so they were definitely getting a lot of the ball in the final third on the right-hand side. Having Lucas Caligari make his debut for the club as well in this game, he looked really solid as well. I think, as I wrote in my day after piece, about this game, it's kind of a step in the right direction, but not a leap forward, right? Like, we know that this team is capable of playing this way. We got to see it again, but I mean, you didn't really take any steps forward, but at the same time, taking into account that this team is missing a lot of starters. You had Joveljic out on international duty. You only had one real game-changing sub, Efrain Alvarez, but unfortunately, he couldn't really change the game, and I think that's a big storyline to keep an eye out for the rest of the year.
Yeah, he's been given the number 7 shirt already. you see Tyler Boyd starting in his place. So, yep, definitely something to keep an eye on. We were both excited about Preston Judd. We wanted to see what he could bring to the fold. And, I'm not sure you could ask for much more from who is currently the third-string center forward. He had 5 shots on goal. He actually had 5 shots. Actually won 4 fouls, most of which were in dangerous parts of the field. And, he did a really good job of occupying the Portland center backs. He won 75% of his duels. Also, the best chance of the game was created by Judd. He was out in the final third. He was wheeling, and then, he tries to play that ball, bounces back to him, and then, it was so unlucky because, he had that striker's instinct. You saw him just hesitate for a second because he knew that when Bingham would commit, all he would have to do was just sort of slide it in there, and the fact that it just grazed off the post, it was so unlucky. But, again, we were trying to figure out, is Judd someone who can contribute to the first team? Not only can he contribute, he's someone who's earned an opportunity in the future. If the Galaxy are ahead in the match and they need someone, again, to occupy the center backs, just muck things up, just make things a big mess. He's earned future opportunities, so I'm really happy for him.
Yeah, I think he has a lot of those intangibles that, you want to see in an attacker, right? Like that work rate. Like he was constantly making runs. He's the tallest striker they have. He's like 6'3", 6'4", and you have Chicharito, who's they're like under 6 feet, right? Like he's a different profile of a player, and I think that's really good to have. And although he didn't score, he looked dangerous. I think that's a positive sign. We saw that he could score goals at the USL level, but after this game, I think, if you give him a couple more games, couple more minutes consistently, I think you could probably see him score a goal or two and show that he's capable of playing at this MLS level.
Yeah, and like usual, you were right about Tyler Boyd. He had 3 clear chances, 1v1 in isolation in the first half. 1, he turned over. 1, he just sort of dribbled his way out of any sort of opportunity. The only time he created anything was the third chance, where he actually switched the field for Memo to have a one-time shot that unfortunately went off a defender. But, it's been 4 weeks into the season. We gave Tyler Boyd a lot of breathing room. Now we're kind of at that threshold where if he doesn't start producing in the next couple of weeks, is it still going to be fitness, or is this just the player that we're looking at? Everything has to be taken with a grain of salt because the Galaxy have an incomplete roster, but it is what it is at the moment. My one concern, as much as the Galaxy dominated, and I agree with Greg on that, where I disagree is claiming that the Galaxy were dangerous. The Galaxy created chances, but with the exception of really the one opportunity with Judd, were there any clear-cut chances? Ricky Puig, Gaston Brugman, they came to the Galaxy last year, and one of the things they did was give the Galaxy a new dimension. They were so dependent on Chicharito and having those tap-ins, and they couldn't score outside the 18-yard box. But what you saw yesterday, again, Ricky Puig outside the 18, and this is where you got to keep in mind. Ricky, physics comes into mind. Ricky, he weighs 150 pounds. When he's at that 18-yard box, his only real way to beat the goalkeeper is to sort of curve it around him. And so maybe last year when people didn't know that he would go outside the 18 and just sort of curve it in like that, he would score those goals. But you saw Bingham, he knew where he was going to go, and that's how he was able to make the stop. And so the Galaxy, they only had, 1.0 expected goals, and then maybe when you take out Judd's chance, it just wasn't very high. So as excited I am about the Galaxy being able to control games, there's a lot of questions about the offense, especially considering that they got the transfer ban, and they've only got maybe a few more weeks to pick up players, and there's so many question marks right now, Alex.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing right now is just trying to get everybody in and everybody on the same page, right? Because, especially this week, right? You have players that are injured, you have players that are on international duty, And at the moment, you still have an opportunity to sign a player, right? So you kind of need to be able to get all your pieces together and really make a run. And I think, Vanny after the game really emphasized that look, this team's incomplete. They're doing the best that they can. I mean, I think it's all about perspective on how you kind of want to look at the start of the season, kind of maybe a glass, half empty or half full, right? Like, this team hasn't won a game all year, but at the same time, they haven't lost in 3 straight games, right? So it really depends on how you really want to look on the season to really judge what this team is doing. But in the grand scheme of things, the time is running out where you can kind of be okay with maybe not being as good or not living up to the expectations from earlier in the preseason, right? But I think right now what you're seeing is acceptable. Not great, but it gets you over the line, and at least, you're not at the bottom of the table.
Yeah, when I try and summarize what the season's been like so far, I don't want to sound like the dude from The Big Lebowski, but, there's a lot of ins and there's a lot of outs. It's very easy to stammer because at the core of everything, the cheating scandal and the subsequent $1 million fine in GAM and the summer transfer ban, all of that fundamentally changed how the Galaxy were going to be able to conduct their business this winter. And so you basically have an incomplete squad, and until that's rectified, you have a situation where the Galaxy are going to be scraping for points. And maybe that's where it's like a glass half full comes in because, the Galaxy have only scored 2 goals in 4 games. Conversely, the defense has 2 clean sheets. They haven't given up a goal from the run open play in 3 games. And so from that perspective, I guess they've done okay. But, where we're going to have an issue is the schedule coming up is pretty difficult. The Galaxy are going up against Seattle this weekend. Then they travel to Houston, where Houston's won 2 in a row under Ben Olsen. They're starting to scrape together a semblance of an identity. They're going to head back home to play LAFC in the El Trafico. LAFC's head, shoulders above anyone else in the league right now. And then finally, again, another home game versus Austin. And so for me, if you have 4 games coming up and your easiest match is against Austin at home, that tells me that you're going to be in some trouble. And so the Galaxy have about 4 games to really figure out, okay, is this going to be a team that's going to be scraping to just barely make the playoffs? Is this a team that... Hey, Alex, are you there? Uh-oh. Looks like I lost Alex temporarily. Hopefully he comes back in a little bit. But, so So what the Galaxy are facing is a situation where, again, they've got 4 games, and even Scott French, he actually went and grilled Greg about it during the post game. Greg evaded the question at first, so we asked him again, and being more specific about when's all the personnel going to show up. Greg said anything from weeks to a month. I think he himself has maybe that 3 to 4 week period earmarked for when all the pieces come together, and then maybe that's when we need to start seeing results as opposed to potential. So, moving on. Let's see here. The next thing that me and Alex were going to discuss is basically who's the standout, who's performed the best over the first 4 games of the season. And for me, that's very easy. Jalen Neal. I can count the number of mistakes that he's made in the first 4 games with these fingers here, with one hand. The progression he made from really preseason, where he was the 4th choice center back, and he was, Greg said it himself. There was Mavinga, Koulibaly, Caceres, and that he was expected to back them up, and that he was expected to play significant minutes. That changed very quickly after a few successful caps with the U.S. national team and a few successful performances. I don't think Greg envisioned Mavinga sitting down after a pair of games, but unfortunately Neal has played him off the field. And so, hey, Alex, you're back.
Yeah, my internet went out for a bit. Sorry about that.
No problem. I've been keeping it going, surprisingly. I was talking about Jalen Neal. basically about. I consider him to be the top performer of the Galaxy this season. We had just gone over his U.S. national team camps and how he basically went from being the first choice center back to a locked in starter. In fact, now the Galaxy, the worry for them is going to be this summer when he's basically, it's more or less a lock that he's going to be playing in the U20 World Cup in Indonesia. So that's going to be a concern. But he's a very cerebral center back. He's got astute positioning that he combines with this ability he has to never overcommit. When you're an attacker, how the defender moves, that's part of the dance. You expect them to move certain ways. And what I really love about Jalen Neal is, he never overcommits specifically from tight spaces. And so you see it over and over again. These attackers, they meet up with Jalen and then they don't know what to do. And and what he does by doing that is he forces them into a low percentage shot. But that's just part of his game. He's also very, very calm on the ball, and he's so good at breaking line passes. I mean, I've said it myself. Like, I'm surprised he wasn't on the first team earlier. So, again, the Galaxy are going to miss him, and for me, if there is a runner-up, it would have been Jonathan Bond before he got hurt. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think, the one word I think describes Neal perfectly is composed. I think everything he does has a really good composure to it. He, doesn't look like he's 19, right? Like, he's definitely very just well-versed when it comes to what he's doing. He's always in control. I mean, I thought this game he did really good. I thought maybe towards the end, he kind of lost a little bit of the gas. I think he almost got beat by a player, so he had to pick up a yellow card. And that's okay. I mean, he's young. He's still, getting into this match fitness, playing at this intensity because, the USL level is lower than the MLS level. It's a little bit more intense, when you're playing in Major League Soccer. So I was really surprised to see him go another 90. I thought maybe he would have gotten someone like Chris Mavinga who, lost his spot, or even Sega Koulibaly a little bit more involved. Somebody, who's, trying to get back into fitness, who's gone for a bit. But nonetheless, I mean, he still did good. He's looked great out there. Definitely one of the breakout players, not only in the LA Galaxy, but in MLS in general, in my opinion. So I think he's really being tested well, and that's good in preparation for the Under-20 World Cup later this year, like you mentioned. Also, since we're on the topic of center backs, I mean, Eric Zavaleta looked good against the U.S. The other night. He did well against Daryl DK, against those attackers, Christian Pulisic. So, I mean, that's a positive sign as well. He probably won't get much playing time, but it's still good to see one of your center backs be able to put up a quality performance against, European caliber players.
What I loved about Jalen when he slowed the person down and got the yellow, it almost reminded me of Raheem Edwards when he did the tackle on Sebastian Berhalter. It was almost the same type of play, so I thought, all right, maybe he gets a bit of a break for that. Tell you what, Alex, is there a player who surprised you so far this season through 4 games?
I think maybe the biggest surprise for me I'm not going to get too deep into it because I have an article talking about it later tomorrow. But I think Raheem Edwards has been a surprise.
Go on the striker to read that.
Yes, it's Raheem Edwards, and I'll let you know why if you read my article. But it's Raheem Edwards. It might be a surprise for you, but personally, I think Raheem Edwards has been the biggest surprise for different reasons, and I'll dive into that.
For me, I think that Gaston Brugman has been actually very influential for the Galaxy so far this season. He had a positive impact when he came in last season, but he stepped it up. I think that he is fully acclimated to not only just the physicalness of the league, but also the athleticism. If you look up the stats, it's pretty insane. He leads the league in passes completed, passes into the final third, progressive passes, and I didn't confirm it, but I know that the first 3 games he led the league in breaking line passes. So what he's been able to do has been fantastic, not only individually, but he's also really taken the burden off of Mark Delgado, and he's allowed him to play sort of not a quieter role, but he doesn't have to run the show like he did last year. Now, everyone loves hearing your opinion, so I thought I might ask you, what about Ricky Puig? How do you feel about him so far this season?
I think he's doing what you would expect him to do when he has lackluster wingers. I think he's doing everything he can to really be able to move the ball forward. I mean, he constantly loves to play like ahead of the halfway line, in that, between that middle and final third, right? That's his sweet spot where he likes to get the ball, where he's constantly moving and very active. And I think that's great. That's where you want to get him involved. But when you're struggling to really create when you're struggling to, open up space in front of the penalty area, that's where it really struggles. And you see a lot of those passes, those switches that go out wide, and it kind of blunts out the attack, in my opinion. I think that the Galaxy are a way better attacking team when they're attacking right through the middle than when they go out wide. I think you really start to see a lot of them open up, both attacking-wise, and you also see them get a little bit more creative when it comes to their runs that they want to make inside the box. When it comes to kind of creating those, 1-2 plays on the wings between, the fullback and the winger, right? I think we saw that a lot last year with Julian Araujo and Douglas Costa and Ricky Puig, where those three would definitely try to combine with one another, try to get, space on the flank, or, try to get the ball to Puig right through the middle and get another player on the ball. And I think he's doing just as well as you'd expect. Still, the really high completion percentage. He's very active in the middle of the park. Has really good chemistry with Gaston Brugman. I think those two have been the best players on this Galaxy team. I think Brugman's been the best player on this team. Club captain Gaston Brugman. He's taken the captain's armband and represented it well out there on the pitch. But I think you'll start to see more of an impact from Puig if the Galaxy can get their players back like Chicharito. If they can get in maybe another winger. I think a lot of people came into this season with the expectation he would be an MVP candidate. Obviously that 10-game sample size of him showed a lot that he could do. But, it's a different year. You have a different team, different teammates. The league knows who you are because, during those 10 games last year, there was a very, very limited film on him from his time at Barcelona. So essentially we were seeing what Ricky Puig could do those last 10 games. We saw it and everybody else saw it. And it's no surprise that a lot of teams are being able to game plan against him a little bit better. But I think he'll definitely, step it up a little bit as, players come back, as the team starts to garner a bit more chemistry. Right now, I'm not really too worried about Puig. I think, I think he just needs to try not to play hero ball a little bit too much. I think sometimes during the games he wants to get a little fancy with a couple extra touches or, commits too much and might lose the ball. I'll have some stats tomorrow on my piece about Ricky Puig, kind of going over how he is with the ball and all that. But in my opinion, I don't think, it's amazing what we're seeing from Puig, but I mean, he's still doing what you'd expect him to do. And at the end of the day, that's a net positive.
Yeah, Greg said so himself. He's been impatient because he wants to do everything at once, and he's got to rely on the offense that doesn't have all the pieces. So he's just got to be patient. My buddy Sean Steffen, he used to run stats for the Houston Dynamo. He had an opinion on Ricky. I posted something on Twitter about how Opta observed that Ricky has carried the ball for more yards than any other player in MLS this season. Sean goes, it looks a lot like last year where he broke lines the most. The general problem with relying on Puig is to be a consistent final third threat is that he receives it so deep to either carry or hit a progressive pass, which mostly puts him distant from goal when things start. Not to say that Puig is bad, he's incredible, but they need to be able to create from what he offers from deep because he can't really join the attack and transition and from that position, so he's often involved in slow possessions in the attacking third. Need a creative winger. Also, maybe someone with a little bit of pace, but beggars can't.
Yeah, and I think Ricky Puig, we see his best passes when he's a bit deeper on the field, right? When you have that winger who's making that run that nobody else would be able to play that ball but him. Like I think against Sporting Kansas City last year at home, I think it was Cabral who made this great run, and Ricky Puig was at the halfway line, and he just passed it right into the outskirts of the penalty area. And Cabral with his pace was able to get there, drew the penalty, and the Galaxy was able to get back into that game. And you haven't been able to see that with any of the wingers so far with this Galaxy team. I think we might need to see a little bit more of Tyler Boyd doing that. He's got the pace to do it. Efrain Alvarez is not that player. You're not going to see him make those kind of darting runs. He just doesn't have that work rate. Memo Rodriguez I could see, but I think he's a little bit better when he plays more centrally than he does out wide. But if he can make those runs that come more inside, I think he can kind of get that effect. But I think exactly what you want to see from Puig is him just being a little bit deeper and being able to play those balls. Sure, he scored some goals last year, but he's not necessarily a goal threat player, if you know what I mean. He definitely has it in his locker, no doubt about it. But I mean, do you really want to rely on Ricky Puig making 5 shots from outside of the box every game? I don't think that's really a recipe for success. I think if you can get him to play a little bit deeper, he has gravity. He'll attract players to him. He can spin out of them. Like he's Anakin Skywalker, right? So he'll be able to do all these little maneuvers to create space for himself. But at the same time, he's got plenty of support. Vanny knows the player that he is. He will get support for Ricky Puig, whether that's him trying to dribble out, him trying to make those progressive long passes. I think, Ricky Puig, as the season goes on, he'll start to really, get a little bit more impactful in that final third. And I think with players coming in like Chicharito, who I think he has really good chemistry with, I think we'll start to see a lot more goals from Chicharito and the Galaxy in general. And I think we'll really start to see Puig be a lot more influential in the game.
I want to see this full lineup cook, but we got to wait. So that's that. I'm dying to talk about Seattle, but we got to wait a few days. This is only a half-hour podcast. So in concluding, I would like to talk about LA Galaxy too. We're all bummed because we're all nerds and we have no lives, and we love watching MLS. So, we watch the games on Saturday, or more like 1 or 2, and then there's no games on Sunday. It's kind of a drag. But one thing, there is one positive to that, which is that for a lot of teams, I've noticed, in the schedule, you can watch your team that day, and then the next day watch your MLS next team. And so, whereas in the past I might not have been so inclined, but it was right there, and I was like, all right, I'm going to go check it out. And, it was fun to watch. San Jose, it was LA versus the San Jose or Earthquakes 2, or whatever you want to call them. They're a bit more advanced. They had a clear game plan. The Galaxy, they're still building their roster. Wheels are still in motion, so on and so forth. Johnny Perez was dangerous. The only thing that bugs me is that I wish he was more connected to the game. When I was looking at the passing chart, there wasn't even a line to him. I wish he would, get more involved, because we all want to see him get first-team minutes, and like I said before, he needs to get more connected with the game. What I was excited about was Adam Saldana. Despite his injury derailment, he's still just 21 years old. Interestingly enough, Transfer Market has him listed as his value is $500,000, which is a lot, you might think, for a player playing for Galaxy 2. But he was at that World Cup, that very influential World Cup with Gio Reyna and Ricardo Pepi and so on and so forth. So, he's got talent. Although, let's not talk about the results at that World Cup. But and Aaron Cervantes, by the way, was at that World Cup too, just to point it out. But Eric Saldana, he's a player I'm very high on. It's just he needs to be more of a two-way player out there.
Exactly.
When you would watch him on the first time, he was practically scared to play forward passes. And, if he can add that element to his game, he has the potential to be an elite player. But that's the one thing that's missing. So it was really nice to see that, to see some progression on that part. And, the game was a little disappointing. Like I said before, San Jose, they had a clear game plan. They were clearly better. Obviously, they won 3-0. But, I will tell you right now, going to games, going checking out Los Dos, it's a good time. And this season, they're going to be playing at the main stadium. So check it out this Sunday. I believe it's at 5 o'clock. They're playing North Texas FC. And so, and then you can probably see Galaxy Mama. She's there, too. So, all right, I guess that's all we were going to have for today. We're right on the dot, 7 o'clock, so we're taking off. We will be back in a few days on a Thursday. We haven't figured out the time, probably 6:30 or something. But, we'll be sure to let you know. Maybe we'll go live, but nobody's had success with going on live lately, so we just might have just can it. But either way, we're happy to have you. Thank you so much for listening. My name is Mike Gray. I cover the Galaxy and LAC for the Striker. This is Alex Ruiz. He covers the Galaxy as a Strikers beat writer. You can catch him on Twitter. You can catch me on Twitter. I don't even know how to say the name tags. I'm not that clever or whatever, but we'll figure it out. So take it easy, everybody, and have a good one.